What's up, sports fans, and welcome to the Sports Opinions podcast. I am your host, as always, Alex Cuesta. You can find me on Twitter at @_Cuesta30, and you can find Sports Opinions on Twitter at SportsOpinion30. And if you're listening to this, as always, thank you for listening. If you're not, tell your friends where you can find us. You can find us at iTunes, Google Play Music, Spreaker, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. Hopefully soon Spotify. I'm waiting to hear on that. But Spotify, if anyone's listening, just get me on there. I want to be on there. With me today for the 26th episode is someone who's special to me. I've known him now for I don't even know how long, back in the high school days. But it is D.D. Williams. His friends know him as D.D. His athletes know him as Coach. And his students know him as Mr. Williams. What's up, D.D.?
What's up, Cuesta? Good to be with you, man. Thank you for having me. I'm very grateful for that.
Absolutely. Where can the people find you, D.D.?
All right. So the full name is Darnell Denzel Williams. That's how you can find me on Facebook. If you're looking for Instagram, it's Mr. D_Williams. That also goes for the Twitter account as well. Very active on those pages, and I'm always looking for more people to come on through.
So one day, the reason why D.D. calls himself D.D. is because when one day D.D. is absolutely famous, he don't want anyone to mix up the other Denzel Washington with the real Denzel right here.
That's right.
So
middle name is Denzel. Don't forget
it. So I know you're a big basketball fan. You're a basketball coach. You actually coach someone in the family that we're both very close to, the Caloras. You coach Olivia in basketball. I'm good friends with Alyssa and Christina. So it's a small world there. But laying it on you right away, is LeBron going to steal one, or is this series over?
Okay, I'm actually excited for it tonight. I cannot wait to go see what's going to happen here. Going out with a couple friends. I got to be honest with you, though. It's not looking good. How do you stop a team like the Warriors? Even when Steph Curry has his worst shooting night, you have someone like KD who just steps up and becomes an animal. It's almost unfair. It's almost uncalled
But it's
for.
Can we talk about this real quick, though? Because how does Steph Curry always get away from the scrutiny? LeBron has a bad game. We hear about it on SportsCenter for the next 8 years. KD doesn't show up a little. KD needs to step up. He's a number 2 player. We're talking about a dude who's in the conversation to be the best shooter of all time. And he has one of the worst finals performances in history for a superstar. And he gets overshadowed by the fact that Durant carries him and they win. Who else gets a pass? And this isn't the first time in the finals that Steph Curry's disappeared. Every finals we've seen, he's disappeared for a game or two. So how does he get that pass?
You know what? It's one of those things that's hard to explain. He's got the younger generation wrapped around his finger, where the children of the late '90s and early '90s, we transitioned from the Jordan era to the Kobe era to the LeBron era. So we have that our LeBron wrapped around our fingers.
But where's Melo's pass? Where's Chris Paul's pass? They ain't getting passes. They're getting ripped. It's like they don't get any passes, but this dude. He gets, and here's the thing, I'm a Warrior, and people might not know, I'm a big Brooklyn Nets fan. I wrote about the Brooklyn Nets on websites. But the Golden State Warriors have been my second favorite team, going back to the Jason Richardson, the Baron Davis, the old logo with that big Herculean dude holding a lightning bolt. That's what drew me. So it's I've been a Golden State fan. I'm not a huge fan of this itineration, which is funny because they're winning. But, I love Steph and Clay when we brought them on. I like the Splash Bros. I know they got Durant to win more, but I'm not a fan of bringing Durant in, as great as he is. But for me, it's he just gets that pass. And that I love Curry because of a great player he is, but it annoys me that he gets that pass.
But I think you just said it the best. They are the Splash Brothers. So it kind of takes off that pressure where a lot of people are going to tell you, hear Stephen A. Smith say it all the time too, who does LeBron have? We see the memes, we see all the posts on Twitter about how he's waiting for somebody to come along. There's no one there to step up, and it really hurts, and it's not fair.
It might not be fair, but I touched on this last week when I did my podcast solo. I touched on both ends of the coin where LeBron doesn't have the help. Kevin Love ain't the guy that he was in Minnesota. Kyrie dipped out. And even when Kyrie was there, he really didn't blossom up until we saw him blossom in the final year in Cleveland and really in that playoffs when he helped win a championship. But at the same time, LeBron does it to himself. LeBron gets his boys paid. He opts out every 2 years to get paid because he knows the TV contracts are up, so he gets paid more. but then that hamstrings the rest of the roster moves that they can make. So it's a double edge for me. I sympathize, but then I don't, because LeBron does it to himself.
Yeah, and he puts all that pressure on his back. And I think that's kind of what we saw in game 2. He put everything on his back, and it just didn't work out for him. With game 1, where he was a beast, he showed up, he was a monster, and they still fell short. There's no way you're scoring 51 points in a game and falling short. I just don't understand how that happens. That's a lack of where are your boys at.
Well, J.R. Smith, we knew he was not at the game at the end of that one. Repping the Jersey Shore. Lakewood.
Right, Lakewood, down the street from where I'm at, man. So, it's hard because I tell the people who are close by, like, I'm rooting for this guy, man. J.R. Smith, and this is no joke. I've been coaching AAU basketball for the last 7 years. One of the organizations I was a part of, his goddaughter played for me. And, he came down and he sponsored us with bags and everything.
He's a nice guy. JR's a good dude.
Yes, this is a guy I'm rooting for. So when I see this, and I'm like, come on, bro.
Now, I'm aging myself a little because I don't even know if you remember him, but I remember when JR was young, and he was, he didn't stay in Lakewood, he didn't finish, he went to a prep academy because he was that good. But there was, at one time, when we had a player named Jerron Griffin, and Jerron Griffin was as good of a basketball player that Manchester's ever seen, got a full ride to Rutgers. Unfortunately, that was when Rutgers was still in very much transition as a team, so he never blossomed into the player he could be. But Jerron Griffin was pro caliber in high school. Yes. He played a young J.R. Smith in Lakewood, and it was probably the biggest hype you have ever seen. It was 2 future pro caliber players going at it, and that was just like the highlight for me in high school. When I was young, I think I was a freshman.
What was it? Maybe 05, 04, right?
It had to be like, I think it was like 03, actually.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Because I was done in 07, so...
Yeah, I do remember the tail end of Griffin and getting a chance to see him in real life. And just on a quick side note, he's gone off into his career into education, and he is also coached basketball. But that was one of the guys that, like you said, I would have liked to see him play in the league, but he fell short,
And that happens. There's plenty of great players that fall short, and it does, he got a full ride to a legitimate Division I program that he thought he can turn around, and it wasn't in the cards, but it doesn't diminish anything that I saw Jerron Griffin do on the court.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
And you talked about your coaching, and I wanted to definitely touch. You've coached AAU, and you've coached women, which I know my uncle. We both know my uncle John Portaways. He's done both sides of the coin. He's coached men, he's coached women, and there's definitely there's a different challenge to coaching young women as opposed to coaching young men in a sport like basketball where the fundamentals are all the same. What is your challenges as a coach when it comes to coaching women as opposed to coaching young men?
Well, let me just say this. First of all, shout out to Coach John Portaways, who actually, he was my coach as a JV player in Manchester Township High School on the JV team. I'll never forget it. I was this close to walking out and quitting. I felt like everything was against me. I felt like some guys just weren't working as hard as they could, and here I was showing up every day and still falling short of the straw. And I remember he pulled me to the side and he basically told me to man up. And it wasn't one of those things where it discouraged me, but he encouraged me. He kept saying these exact words, and I'll never forget it because I wanted to be the best defensive player out there. He said, you better take the extra step, take the extra step, take the extra step. But not only was he talking about just in basketball and defense how to slide your feet, he was saying that in a sense of life, man. You take the extra step. So how ironic now, all these years later, I graduate, move on, go to college, so on and so forth. I come back and coach at the exact high school that I went to. And even though I coached on the girls' side of it, there he was on the other side, still coaching those boys. And I went over there and gave him a hug. And every time I see that guy, he's always like, how you doing, brother? Everything good? And it is good because I took the extra step.
Now imagine having that man there with you, like I've had in my life, the privilege of having that guy there every step of the way, every big moment, everything. Me and Coach Portaways, I call him Coach even though he's my uncle. Me and Coach, we are very close. I coached with him in football. He never had a chance to cross over and coach me, and I think that was partially by design, that he didn't want to sit there because everyone in Manchester, if you play sports, you know Portaways. And I think it was something where he never want to be associated where I got anywhere because of Portaways. He wanted me to make my own self, and I think I did that. I had a good high school career in both football, the 2 years I played, freshman and senior year, and then in running. And, college sucked, but that was that.
Well, he is the man. And now, just to answer your question earlier, the transition from the girls' side of it to the boys' side. And I often get asked, hey, are you ever going to coach boys basketball? I'm fine right where I'm at girls' basketball. And here's what I personally believe. Girls' basketball is straight fundamentals. It is the old school dribble, pass, shoot. When you take all that fancy stuff out of the itinerary and you just play good old-fashioned basketball, it's what makes the difference, in my opinion. And the fun stuff is good to see. It's good to see it dunk. I used to throw it down back in the day too, but there is nothing like seeing good old fundamental moving the basketball, 5 girls on the court coming together as one. That's awesome.
Yeah, but and it's interesting because you're actually great to have on this week, because last week my first topic was talking about the WNBA, and we know they're in season right now. ESPN is doing all they could. They really are to try and push the WNBA. But the numbers really aren't there. They never have really, I feel like their height of the league was Cheryl Swoops and Lisa Leslie when we were young. They got a lot of notoriety, and it's dwindled ever since. I don't know if you know, but the Liberty have to find a new home. They're getting kicked out of MSG. So
wow, that actually breaks my heart, because in the summer we used to go down there with the kids at the summer camp and let them go see a girls' basketball game, and we would go to support them.
Yes. So my thing was, though, at a certain level, the women's basketball is already smaller. The women's three-point line in the professional and even the college game is already shorter. It's time for them to lower the rim. And that's just my opinion, because, yes, the flash, like you said, it's not pure fundamentals on the med side. Throwing it down, it does take it away. We see it in the NBA game. It's three-pointers and alley-oop dunks and slams.
Right.
But that's what people pay to see. And there's amazing athletes that play in the WNBA with the Maya Moore, the Elena Deladon, Diana Taurasi.
Yeah, God, Maya Moore. I mean, you can stop there.
She's LeBron James. She's the LeBron James of the WNBA. Now, just imagine they drop that rim down to 9 feet. Maya Moore's dunking on everybody. She really is LeBron James. And as much as it would take away, I feel like it would only put money in these women's pockets where they so deserve it, so they're not making $23,000 a year and have to work a second job.
Yes. Yeah.
Maya Moore, I looked it up. She's making $45,000 a year. The biggest star of the WNBA is making $45,000 a year.
Wow.
It doesn't make sense. And, I know, and one of my good close friends up here in New York is Debbie Waters, and she was very involved in women's basketball in our local area. She coached a bunch of teams.
Yeah, she was coach. Yeah. The same definitely sounds familiar. And
she is, I've talked to her, and she says, no, I don't want to see the fundamentals change. And I get it. And I get wanting, the biggest draw from Marist College, where I went, is the women's basketball. The men's basketball is awful at Marist. We haven't been good in a long time. The women have been NCAA contenders. They win the MAC often. And it's fun to watch in person, but on TV, it doesn't translate. So What do you think about the possibility of lowering the rim for the more effective, let's get these women the notoriety they deserve? There's already a lot of differences when you get to the higher levels. Why not just kind of admit that women can't jump as high? They're not as explosive when they get to an elite level as the explosive men. So let's reward them and let them dunk and let them get money. What do you think about that?
This one's actually a tough question, and I say that because...
And I'm not saying it to demean the women in any way. I more want to, bring them up.
Right, which is so glad that you're making that so clear, because a lot of people can easily twist that and go, well, what are you saying? We're just not great athletes, and that's not the case.
I have plenty of problem with a lot of women's sports, and not for the women athletes themselves, for the way the sports themselves treat the women, but that's a whole other podcast.
Oh yeah, that's 10 times this conversation right there. You know what? For the sake of seeing women basketball become that competitive edge, that athleticism that I'm looking for, I absolutely agree with you in that sense. And if you dropped the rim a whole foot and made it 9 feet, it would change the game. My only concern with that, and I'm thinking from the coach's perspective, as again, a person with pure fundamentals, is does it change the shot of our women who's been in the league for so long? How does it affect the game? How many times have I played street ball and we go out on the court and we're playing on an 8-foot hoop and we're having a good time and we're dunking and we're showing off? But the reality of it is our shots being thrown off because that whole arc changes. Now, I'm no mathematician. I do not teach math. I teach English. And when you're going up there, the whole trajectory changes. So my fear is, how big of an adjustment would it be? And is this something now that if the WNBA does lower the rim, are we going to see points change over time? And will the game become too fancy? Will we have more injuries? These are just some of the questions some of the concerns I would have as a coach.
Absolutely. And I look at it in a sense of we might see scoring go up, because if you look at it, the differences in heights between the men and the women really make that trajectory question that you have. The women are shooting on a lot higher arc just to make that 10-foot rim. Because you have to look at it. I think Diana Taurasi is like, what is she, 5'6", 5'7"? She's not a tall woman. Probably the Steph Curry, Ray Allen, Reggie Miller, whoever's your greatest shooter of all time, Diana Taurasi's it in the WNBA. But her arc level needs to be so much higher because of that 10-foot rim. It would adjust, but these elite women would adjust their shots. And if you started off at
That's true.
the high school age and these women come up and start learning how to shoot there, it's going to make a world of difference. And you could probably bring the three-point line back a little more, because then that would help them.
Yeah.
And also imagine the competitiveness with Connecticut. If women, because there are some fantastic athletes in the college level that aren't as fundamental as a team as Connecticut is. And you put these fantastic athletes against them, it kind of evens the playing field. Don't get me wrong, Connecticut's elite in terms of every way, but there's more of an even playing field when some of these freak athletes can maybe make that big game momentum-changing dunk that let them go on a run and take down number one.
Wow.
I put thought into this, D.D. I put a lot of thought into this.
I see you have. I'd be interested to see how it would turn out. And I'd be interested to hear the talks about it in the women's locker room and what they would think and what they would believe. I think, and I hear what you're saying, I think on the younger level, we start off and make it, regulation for high school basketball. But, now, and this is just me thinking outside the box, do you now get into a whole new thing where we're adjusting rims and adjusting schools where, the regulation rim has always been 10 feet. Now we got to change everything throughout. And as someone who works in the schools and at the playgrounds and the parks, how does this change? How does it not change? I don't know.
It would be something. Well, most rims are adjustable, even in the high schools. You can drop them, you can lower them, make them higher. I think most of them go to 12. They could drop down to like 8 or 7. So I don't think the adjustment's a big issue. And I hear you. These elite athletes at the WNBA probably won't want to hear it. They probably won't. They're going to say, why the hell should I have to play at a lower level? No, I'm going to stick to my 10 feet. But then when you tell them, okay, now you're missing your $10 million contract, they're going to go, lower that rim. I mean, money talks.
You're right. You're absolutely right on that. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Absolutely. I love it.
Those competitive high-end games where someone comes down, my Morgan, she gets up regardless, and see her slamming on a 9-foot, man, that'd be beast.
And just imagine Elena Deladon driving the lane and dunking on Brittany Griner, who would be like the Shaq, or whoever you want to equate to being a dominant big man in WNBA. She'd be a dominant big woman. And just imagine the amazing things the highlights that you'll see on a SportsCenter top 10. You're not just going to see a game-winning 3 from a WNBA game. You might see a poster, which would be awesome.
Right. But
it's tough.
Let me say this to you. And as coaching young girls, sometimes I coach girls as young as 5th and 6th or even 4th and 3rd. They might see this as Wonder Woman, if they're watching their female athletes getting up like that, they might say, why not me? It might give them that competitive edge to work harder. So in that sense, I hear what you're saying.
What's the most iconic probably picture in sports? It's a silhouette that's on every big basketball shoe you'll ever see. Jordan going up for his signature dunk. It's not Jordan's fadeaway. It's not his three-point shot. It's not even his most iconic shot where he shoved a dude and made a mid-range. No.
That's right.
It's his dunk. It's Shaq dunking. It's all these dunks are what draw people. And if Now you can get a signature shoe where a woman is putting down a mean one-hander. And the signature shoe starts to sell to these young girls. And the butts start right now at the WNBA games. It's diehards. It's fundamentalists. It's a very skeleton crew. You've been to them. It's not a big crowd.
No, not at all.
Add that different sense of excitement, and they'll start to make money. MSG is taking away the liberty because they make more money putting on a show that night as opposed to putting on a WNBA game.
Yeah, it is sad. It does break the heart, man. It really does.
Absolutely. So we touched on your coaching. I like talking to you about the women thing, and you know, I kind of cut you off, so I really didn't get your answer completely. I'm going to let you finish now. Why you love coaching the women so much?
Well, here's the thing. I am all about trying to help empower those around me and making them feel the love and the self-worth. And oftentimes, and we know it to be true. I mean, look at social media now. You know, women are pushed aside. People really don't believe. And this is, and I'm going to say it because I tell my students this, it's 2018. This is the year of the woman. What an opportunity to be a coach at this time for young ladies to tell them, why not you? I have seen some incredible things on the floor in girls basketball in my last 9 years of coaching. And the last 9 years, I went from middle school to high school, back down to grade school. So I have seen so much. And there's nothing like the drive and passion of young ladies coming together to say, we got this.
D.D., is there a better feeling? Because we were both athletes and we accomplished things as athletes. And, you know, it's a great feeling when you accomplish things. And we both coached. Is there a better feeling than when you coach up this athlete that's been struggling to do something, and then they put it together and they do it, and they turn around and they give you that look in their face, the elation, the look that, coach, I did it. Is there any better feeling than that when you're sitting there coaching in a game or whatever?
Oh, man, it is it's what you work for. It's what you put the hours in for. It's those late nights. It's those nights to stand up and come up with a game plan. It's the filming of the players and watching the film back and having those one-on-one conversations with them. Hey, sometimes it's even turning that hat backwards, because my girls know when that hat goes on backwards, I'm coming at you everything I have to get into your face and tell you, why not you? And then I can tone it back down and say, but hey, you got this. Go out there and set your goals now. So you're absolutely right. That feeling, I mean, the first time as a coach that I watched a team win a championship, I mean, brought tears to my eyes when those girls came over to me and said, this is for you, you know?
Nothing better.
Powerful stuff.
And I had the experiences. I coached track and field at Marist College. And these are now grown men and grown women. I was on the sprinting side for both. Could you imagine that, D.D., me being a sprinting coach? But when I was a distance runner, middle distance guy, but I was the sprinting coach with Terry Horton. He was the head. I was basically a helping coach. And, you know, and I knew for a lot of time, a lot of the athletes, both men and women, started to come up to me after the races. What'd you see, coach? Because I was always sitting there at the 200-meter mark, screaming my face off at my athletes. You know me, I'm an excitable guy. Screaming my face off. And it wasn't just my sprinters. It was my distance runners, everyone. They all looked for me at 200 every time. So they would come up to me, and they came up to me, and a lot of them told me for my realness. Because if they had a crap race, they would come up to me. Yeah, coach, how'd I do? You ran like shit. You know, you gave up here. You didn't do what we were trained to do. You got another race. Go buck up and get ready. And, you know, and I was dealing with grown men and grown women, but it was still, there were certain things that they needed. And the realness, like, you're obviously dealing with a little bit of a lower age level, so you can't really use the curse words. And I don't think you're a guy that uses curse words in general. I'm a little more of a brash human being, but it was more the realness that they came up for. And I know you keep it real to all your athletes.
Oh, yes, I do. There is, I tell you, I have to share this story with you. I coach an AAU team right now over at Hoop Group Neptune, Short Shots. I have seen this team do some phenomenal things. Our record is unbelievable, man. We have over 30-something wins as a team, and we've just done phenomenal. And one of my players, man, I mean, she just wasn't into it. And I went right up to her face, and I didn't even know I was on film. I mean, this literally just happened a couple weeks ago. And I'm barking in her face, man. I'm telling you, if you were someone on the outside looking in, you'd say, someone go help that girl. This guy's crazy.
Old school coaching.
As I'm yelling and getting fired up, all of a sudden, her teammates come over and they encourage her. And all of a sudden my voice changes and I'm like, now go do this thing. Go do what you were meant to do. And I didn't know any of this was on film. This is not for camera, it's not theatrics.
This is some Coach Carter stuff I'm hearing right now. This is Coach Carter right now.
Dude, I will never forget those girls coming over. And I'm screaming, you make me the enemy. Make me the one you want to go up against. And you come together and you fight for it. And they did just that. They came together and fought for it. So here's what I've learned in my 8-9 years of coaching. You got to keep it real. You got to keep it real. But when you add love to it, you can't fake that. So even though those people from the outside are looking at it like, oh my God, this guy's crazy. It's what those 10 girls in that huddle at that time knew.
They know you care. They absolutely know you care. And, you know, we were both athletes. We know when it's fake. We both had fake coaches. We know when it's fake. And we know when they were just there to get their stipend. Like, and you know what? Now being a grown man, I cannot blame some of these people because a teacher's salary isn't amazing, especially when you're just getting in. And that stipend really helps. And if you're a coach for 3 sports, you have one passion and another 2 just to do it. You know what? They help. It helps a lot.
Yeah.
So I get it. So we're going to, you know, I could talk to you about all this stuff, but we're going to slide into, you also do some motivational speaking. And I know you've done that stuff and you can obviously hear your passion for a lot of these things. What made you start motivational speaking and how do you use it in your coaching?
Oh, man, motivational speaking. What an honor it's been. I have now done over 150 venues and speeches at different schools, colleges, events, get-togethers. It's truly been a blessing. It all started. I was in high school, actually, and I just moved to Chicago my senior year to finish up high school. And this teacher approached me, and he was talking about my writing and my poetry. And he says,
I forgot you moved away. Damn. It's been a minute. I forgot.
yeah. And it was a rough time, man, in my life. Very rough time to move away from everything. I remember the guy coming up to me, the teacher, Mr. Johnson. I'll never forget his name. And let me just tell you how ironic life is. And I don't want no tears and no sympathy. But Mr. Johnson, how about this? 20 years ago, it also taught my dad.
Wow.
What a small world. What a small world. I didn't even know that. Didn't even know that. And so rest in heaven to my father, man. So it just shows you how good, you know, how God does have a plan. But anyway, Mr. Johnson came to me. He says, I want you to give this speech at the Black History Month Day, and you're going to go speak to the people. And I was like, what? So I remember walking up to this crowd, and it was my first speaking ever. So here I am, all of 17, about to be 18 years old, and there are like 300 people at this event, and there's a woman in the audience. I cannot make this up. She's 98 years old. We're at a Dr. King rally, and it's my turn to speak. Dude, I walk up to the podium. I get there, and I say, oh, shit. My speech is at my seat. I left my speech at my seat. and I looked, but I had to play it cool. I leaned into the microphone, and I'll never forget because I was looking directly at this lady here, this elderly woman, 98 years old. And Miss Claudette, oh man, I won't even forget her name because she introduced herself much later in the day. But I'm looking at Miss Claudette, man, and I look, and I got to speak now. I got to speak. They're waiting for me. So I say, my name is Darnell Denzel Williams, and I am living the dream. And I stepped back from the podium, and when Miss Claudette stood up and started clapping, I knew I had it from there. I gave this entire speech. I came back to my seat. I looked back over at my boy who had to give a speech that day too, and he looks at me and goes, bruh, your speech was right here the whole time. I said, I know. And I knew at that moment I had a passion from the heart. And since then, I came back to New Jersey because I was in Chicago at that time. Came back to New Jersey, started speaking at the old high school, and from there, it just kind of blew up. So how I use it in my coaching every day.
Bottom line, I just want to say here, like, your thing is, you had a speech already. It was fabricated. It was what you wanted to say. And then you went up there and you just said it. One of the things that I learned, you just can't fake real. It's not something you can fake. So if you were up there speaking as a black man at a rally for the pride of black people, and you had a passion for it. You have a passion for speaking. You have a passion for others, and you just can't fake that. So what you said there was probably better than anything you had written down.
Yeah, Yes, and I really appreciate your words, man, because I'm telling you, I just let it flow. And the more I went on to speak, the more I felt, wow, this is good. And there comes a point in your life where you're like, you got to use this now. And it wasn't just about having that gift and using that gift, it was living the gift.
Now, D.D, how do people get in contact with you if they want to do any speaking engagements? I'm up here in Poughkeepsie, New York. If they want you to possibly come up here, how do they get in contact with you? How do they work out? How to get you up here and have you do a speech?
Oh, man, that is a great question. And believe it or not, back in the day, I actually just had my website up. I actually just took it down not too long ago. But the best way to reach me right now is definitely via Facebook at Darnell Denzel Williams, because I'm the first guy that'll pop up. And if they just message me, reach out, man, I'm all over it. Because that's how actually I got a lot of my speaking gigs. It was people were seeing it on Facebook, and they were reaching out to other people about it.
Definitely. I want to get you more out there as much as possible, because that's what it's all about, linking and networking. So, sorry to interrupt you. As you were going, how do you... Now, I coached, and I know motivation's a big part of it. And you being a motivational speaker, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, how do you use the balance of not getting into, staying as a coach and not just necessarily only being the speaker, still being the coach?
You know what? I found? I found that to each player is different. What's going to work for one may not necessarily work for another. And I think you've learned that over the years as coaching as well. And how I use that instead is I set goals. Not only am I telling you, hey, go out and do this and you can do it, and you're worthy of being somebody special on this team, but I'm going to set goals for you personally. And I do it in my classroom. I do it for myself. We do it every day in my relationship with my wife. We set small, obtainable goals that will reach success for us. And because of that, now I'm using that motivation that I now can give on to others. But while still setting those goals, will fire them up and start to elevate them to the next level of basketball or whatever it is in life.
Goal setting is always important. I got to say this because it's funny you mentioned that everyone's individual. And being a track coach, I coach, like I said, the sprinters. But in college, 800, it depends on what branch. If you're a 400-meter runner that can do an 800, you really train with the sprinters. If you're a miler that does an 800, you're mostly with distance. So I had 800 guys, plus I had short sprinters. And it's funny because I've always said, sprinters are the naturally completely gifted athletes that, just basically found, that they were faster than they were, better at other sports. Where the distance people, they have to work a little bit harder. And it's so funny you mentioned that because I had my distance crew of men, which, the crew that I was the closest with, Josh Siegel, you guys have heard him on this podcast before. Nestor Taylor is going to come on at some point, but Nate Lungarini, Kyle Hubner, that was my core group of guys. And I could just literally give them the workout and they would go do it. That was the end of it. They didn't argue. If they told me they didn't like the workout, they would tell me later it sucked. But they would just go do it. No ifs, ands, or buts. And they'd bust their ass. They'd hit the times, usually do them faster, which I'd have to yell at them for because they were going too fast. Workouts are designed for a reason. And then I had another one of my athletes who I came into his sophomore year. His name started off as Alex Cunningham. It ended up being Hakeem Cunningham. He took his middle name. Hakeem, we're still in touch. Hakeem is another guy who will eventually be on this podcast. But Hakeem, we still keep in touch closely. He's expecting a baby soon. Congrats to Hakeem and Ashley.
Awesome.
Yeah, Ashley's another one of my athletes. She could probably fall on this lines too. Both of them supremely talented. Hakeem was a hurdler, sprinter. He did 400-meter hurdles, specialized in that. Ashley was a short sprinter. But man, if I tell you, especially Hakeem, every battle I got into with this man, about everything, any little thing, if we were trying to coach him up, but why not this way? I don't get it. I don't understand. Why aren't you doing this? I'm like, at one point, I sat there, it was his junior year, beginning of his junior year, and this is kind of when things turned around too. He's doing his Hakeem thing, being difficult, and I turn around, I look at him, I go, Hakeem, I go, so what am I? He goes, your coach. I go, why do I exist to coach me? All right, then, you going to let me do that? Or are you just going to sit there and, you're the athlete. Are you going to be the athlete and let me be the coach? Yeah, I guess so, coach. All right, then, will you start listening? And it's funny that you, just the way you said that, there's so many different... What worked for my middle distance guys, where it was go do the workout, and I kind of had to dial them back because they were psychos. More Hakeem was butting heads and trying to get him to buy into what me and Coach Horton and the big head honcho Pete Colizzo were trying to do. So it's funny you mentioned just the differences, and that this is in collegiate level athletes too, where I told them all the time, Marist College was a small Division I school. We probably didn't have a national champion on that team, and it showed it. None of us won it. But in D1, if your goal isn't to be the national champion, then you have no business being there. So that was just my little aside. Now, I want to ask you, what's your favorite age group to coach now that you've coached so many?
Oh, man, my favorite age group to coach is definitely the middle school age level. That
the awkward phase.
7th grade. Yes. A lot of people.
Will you get one kid in
God bless your soul.
Will you get one girl in 6th grade who's 4'6", and then she comes back and she's 5'3", and it's like, wait, what?
It's happened so many times.
She was your point guard, now she's your center.
My favorite is, you go from, a kid who has no fundamental game at all one season, the next season they're the best thing out there. It changes.
Oh, yeah, they're Jeffrey Giraffe, and then they become a Jackrabbit. Like, all of a sudden, they're handling their coordination comes.
And then if we're honest about it, you get one girl who's sweet as pumpkin pie, who will do anything for you, and then you get another girl who's like, I'm not doing that. I don't care. So what now?
And then it's funny, as the other girl gets better, she develops more sass, and then, for lack of a better term, when you break that sassy girl, she becomes your diehard, and she'll do anything you say.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, it's so funny. I get oftentimes, from parents and other coaches and stuff. This really makes me feel good about it. If I told those girls to jump off a cliff, they're not even saying anything. They're like, let's go. He told us to.
So what side does Olivia Calora fall on? I'm putting her on blast right now. We got to tell Joe and them that I put them on blast. I put her daughter on blast right now. Because Olivia's got sass. I've known her since she was a baby. She's got sass.
But you know what? Good for me. Always a good worker, always willing to take that extra step. There were times we trained out in the rain. I cannot make that up. And I'm sure Gina Calora will be the first to tell you that she remembers those days of coming out of the court and trying to get her to that next level. And there were times she wanted to quit, and she'd give me that look, but I tell you what, she didn't. She did not. So
the patented Calora stare that all the women of that family have. From the mother down to the youngest daughter.
Oh, so you know what that stare is, right?
Oh, my God, I know the exact stare. A little bit. You feel it go through you.
Yeah. Oh, I got those a couple of times out there, especially during our one-on-one training. She just looked at me and go, and I said to her, that's okay. And I say, I'll love you after this. You can't change my love.
You want to take a break? You got to earn it. Keep going.
That's funny that you said that. So, yeah, that is my favorite age to coach and to teach, actually. It's just one of those things where it's like I have the power to help mold and shape them and change them. So this is the time to do it,
Now, it's funny you talk about that because, we were both substituting at the same time when I was home for a little bit. We were in Lakehurst and even in Manchester. And my favorite group, besides going down to, I love going down to pre-K and subbing because they were just loads of fun, pre-K kindergarten. Yeah. And I love being in the resource room with the special ed kids. I loved working with them. But I also loved middle school because, like you said, they were so moldable and just, if you got them to buy in, they did anything. And they, they, to a fault, they would believe you for things too. Because it was funny messing with them sometimes. They were gullible. But to a fault, but it's like that age, like you said, that's the chance for you to get your point across most to them and really change their lives right there.
Yes. Wait, I just have to share this, because when the kids buy into you, they're going to buy it full again. They're going to check. I always share stories about my family, about my life and everything. And I actually share stories about my older brother. And there were times where my brother could look right at my face and he would tell me a lie. And I go, but it must be true. My favorite story that he would ever tell me was, the sky is purple on Thursdays. So I'm telling my students this story, and I'll never get it. This happened on a Tuesday. Thursday comes around, and we're sitting back at the car, brother, read our story for the Endura lesson, and we all walk over to the window, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? And they're like, we're checking to see if the sky is purple. It's Thursday. And do you know, I walked over there, too, just to go check it out to see.
Was brother really right this whole time?
Oh, man. So it's funny to see how that you can really mold their minds,
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're gonna jump into a topic that people know it's no secret that I like to get out a little bit of an itinerary beforehand to mold what we're gonna talk about, but it's never exactly what goes on there. But you brought
Yes.
up sportsmanship and how it's
Yes.
changed in sports. And at this point, I don't know if we're going to get to talk about anything in pro sports. We're going to touch on your proteins, but we could probably do a whole podcast on this. We're going to have to probably shorten it up a little. But it
Okay, fair
really
enough.
got me thinking because it really has changed from the time when me and you were athletes to even now because the connectivity and
Yeah.
everyone's friend. And AAU has made everyone so much closer. Because I remember, DD, like, I hated everyone, especially in football. Football, like,
Yeah.
track was a little different. The pain's the same. You give everyone dap before and after. That's the end of it. Made some friends
Mhm.
because you see them at every meet. But, like, when I played football, going to camps, I hated every kid there. I didn't want to know them at the time. Maybe later, cool. At the time, when we're competing, we're competing. I don't care about you.
That's
And
right.
even off, when it's in season, I got no friends at any other schools. It's different now. So, you to bring that up, how do you feel sportsmanship has changed?
Well, here's the thing with sportsmanship, and
And do
here's
kids really
here's how
have
I
it
answer.
anymore?
Yes and no. I'm almost, and I hate to say this, but it is true. I'm almost shocked when I see another kid say, "Hey, good job," and I see them raise someone's hand up, and I go, "Whoa," And I'm not even trying to be, braggadocious or anything, but I had that mentality like you did. I was like, "You are my enemy until we walk off this court," and then we can be friends and buddy. But that was the only difference.
But you know what
And
though, in football and in like basketball, when I played even in the streets or whatever, if if you got a hard hit or I hit you hard or whatever, I'd pick you up. Or
that's right.
and in basketball, if it was a good hard foul or something, I'd pick you up. It don't mean I
Right.
like you at the moment, but I
Exactly.
acknowledge that I have respect for you as a competitor. To me,
See,
there's a difference between that acknowledgement and using that sportsmanship and being their friend.
and that's the thing I think kids are lacking often, and I think and this is going to get touchy. I think it comes from this idea that we have created a generation where everyone's winners.
Because they're not. There's losers. And that's
Yeah.
why I love track and field. Because
Yeah.
it clearly stated who won and who lost. The person that won first is the winner. Everyone else was not good enough that day. And everyone
That's
can't
it.
get a trophy. And that's just the bottom line.
That's it. Dude, I just got through talking to actually one of the kids I take care of, man, and she was so excited. She's like, "Oh, coach, I got to tell you about my field day," and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, "Oh, field day?" I'm like, "That's awesome. I remember field day. We used to run the 50-yard dash, 100-yard dash. Did you get your medals?" She's like, "We don't do medals." I'm like, "Did you get ribbon?" "We don't do ribbon." I'm like, "Well, what the hell do you guys do?" And she's like, "Oh, we get a high five." And I was like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah.
She goes, "Yeah, you can't make it competitive." I said, "Yes, you can." I said, "Oh, this is the problem." And it's trickled into our school systems where it's like, okay, you get this, you get that, you get this, you get that. And everyone has to feel good about something. How about it's okay to lose? It's supposed to break you down and build you up again. And this is a problem why kids lack sportsmanship, why kids can't take a loss. I can't tell you as a teacher how many times I've seen kids fight each other, get upset at each other, all because they're losing.
Now, honestly, Didi, when you're breaking down tape, you're doing whatever. When you're as a coach, and I know me too, when I used to break down tape, and even for some of my athletes, Robert Planner, Rajon Middleton, sometimes they'd be like, "Yo, here's my huddle. Go check it out. Tell me what I did." And I always learned more by losing. I learned so much more because when you're winning, and even I was the biggest scrutinizer of myself even when I won. But when you're losing, you sit there and you see exactly what your flaws are and what you need to get better at. And I think that's where people are, because everyone's a winner, so no one's trying to work harder on perfecting their flaws.
Yeah. And
It's
the
terrible.
The problem is they get bored too easily. They're like, okay, I took, and this is a basketball perspective, but it's like, okay, I took my 10 shots. I made 9 of them. I must be great now. It's like, no, take 500.
Yeah.
There were times that this too to be true. We would step out in the summer, dude, from like 10 in the morning to like 9 at night, and we would just do what we loved to do, and that was we were involved, we were athletic, and we played. And let me tell you something, man. there was a time where I was not even considered for street basketball. They were like, oh, I guess we have to pick D.D. now. And I'm like, what? Someday I'm going to show you guys. And I would go out on that court by myself.
I like that young D.D. voice. That young D.D. voice is on point.
Because that was the real voice. It was, what do you mean I can't play basketball? Listen, let me tell you something, Questa. This is for all you listeners, too. That very first day I stepped out on those courts in Lakehurst, I will never forget it. I said, hey, can I play? And the guy said, yeah, let me see your basketball. He took my ball and booted that shit across the other side of the park and said, well, you'll never play.
People don't understand about Lakehurst. Lakehurst is a small borough in the town of Manchester. You know, when I was younger and I lived in Manchester, I thought it was a truck stop riding through it to get to Whiting. But when I lived there, what people don't understand, there's two things in Lakehurst that you need to know, and I don't know if that's changed, but when I was there, you need to know at least how to play ball a little bit, because everyone does, and you need to know about cars. If you didn't know about those two things, you were an outcast completely. You needed to know about one or both, preferably both.
Yes. And, dude, I tell you, man, I just went out there every day, and you know what touched my heart? I'll never, ever forget this. I came back on those courts. I was with kids I didn't even know by name, and I stepped on that court, and they look at me and go, you're D.D. They literally was out there saying D.D. range, and they step back and shoot a shot like 4 feet behind the three-point line, because that's where I used to shoot from. And I'm like, whoa, these kids are saying my name when they just shoot.
Yeah, it's
like
crazy.
Kobe Bryant or something. I was like, what in the world is going on? But it was those kind of things, because I drove myself to want to be successful, and I could take that loss, and I could still shake that guy's hand and say, you kicked my ass this time, but when you leave this court, I'm going to stay on this court and keep working, because someday I'm going to own this thing.
But kids don't do that anymore, and that's what comes back down to the sportsmanship thing. Kids don't have respect for each other because they just expect it to happen. They don't respect that kid that was trash, that all of a sudden became good and is now a varsity starter. It's like, meh, but we're going to worry about the star on their team, not that kid that worked his tail off just to get there. And we're not going to respect that kid because he's not dunking. He's maybe a very fundamental kid that had to work his tail off. Now, you're an old school style coach, obviously, with going back to you getting in the kid's face. How do you try and break a generation that really thinks that sportsmanship is just being friends outside and not the respect that we were taught? How do you teach that to your athletes to respect their competitor, but at the same time, you're not friends with them when you're playing with them? And in season, you're not friends. Like, you shouldn't be friends in season. That's my theory.
Right. Well, let me say this first, as far as respect is concerned. And this is in my classroom, and I'm going to keep referring to this. This is also on the court. My kids, my students, my players, my athletes, they're not allowed to even talk to me until they say, hey, coach, how are you? Don't ask me for a favor. Don't ask me for anything until you say, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever day of the time it is. You're supposed to speak first, because that's what we were taught. Then what you do for your team is you build them up and you let them know you're a family. Then what you do to get them to understand that you have to go out there and fight and compete, is you say, you're going to let somebody come in your house and take you out and your family out? No. You got to go fight for them. And then at the end of the game, win, lose, or draw, and I just got through telling my girls this, the only time that you're a loser is when you quit.
And man, just to go to an aside, like, I remember, like you were saying, you go out there and you fight. I remember going to watch teams at the WOBM Classic when it first started or whatever, back, like, I think around our years is when it first started. Because the Retaco Center was pretty new still. He wasn't in jail yet. He was still doing things, not doing frauds that we caught. But, and listen, that dude might have defrauded, but he brought some of the nicest things to Toms River North that we still use today and benefit all around the surrounding area. So as much as he was a bad guy for the fraud, he did a lot for our area in Ocean County in that sense, sports-wise. But, because the Bubble and the Retaco Center are him. The Pep, I don't know what it's called now, the Poland Spring Center, whatever it is, but to me, I know it as the Retaco. But I remember going down there, and one of the main rules of basketball always was that first kid, that first girl, boy that drives the lane is going to get a hard foul. Because they're going to know you don't come in here. Now kids can't foul each other. I don't think they know how to hard foul anymore without getting up and wanting to fight. That kid can't take the hard foul, get up, take it as a hard foul, and go, all right, word, make his free throws, play the game. Now if they want to get up and fight, or kids don't even know how to hard foul and put someone on the ground properly anymore. Like, Have you seen that? Do you still kind of teach that, or is that something that's kind of taboo now?
Well, I tell the kids in AAU basketball, normally the rules have changed. Now you have 6 fouls. I say use them all.
Hell yeah.
Use them. Use them. I said I used them in school. I can't tell you how many games I fouled out. I set the record. And sometimes I see my kids, they'll become frustrated. They'll get the first foul. They'll look at the ref and go, "What do you mean it's a foul?" I'm like, "Stop talking to the ref."
Play the game.
That's it. And I think that's what kids forget sometimes. They forget how to play the game because they're so worried about everything and everybody else. And again, it goes back to the idea of sportsmanship, which is why I wanted to bring it up and tell you it's one of the hardest things as a coach to break, having sportsmanship for your teammates, having it for your coaches, having that respect for the other players, but still being able to compete. And that's what we don't want to lose sight of, being able to compete at a high level.
And as it definitely, as it fades, and I'm not even going to say fades because it molds itself, because in our day, we would never see Jordan. We would never see Kobe. We would never see some our biggest players in the offseason or even in season co-mingling with other superstars. Maybe in the offseason they'll be at a same venue or something, or if they're truly boys, they would hang out. But you wouldn't see the big posses that occur now, especially in basketball. I feel like it's huge in basketball, where you go and you hang out with other people from other teams very often. As that evolves and it's more of friendship over sportsmanship, is traditional sportsmanship, as you and as I know it, do you still feel it's important? Do you still feel it has a place in sports?
Oh, absolutely. It still has its place. It needs to be valid because I'm going to respect the player that gets up off the canvas every single time and showing that respect towards the other players. But like I said, it goes along with that idea of being able to compete. So me personally, I'm all good. I'll give you a good example. Growing up, I played ball with a guy named Jermaine Jackson.
Hey, man.
Yes, sir. The whole town knew it was. But let me tell you something. When we walked on that court against each other, man, look, we was going to fight. We were in it for a brawl, and we were going to fight, but we were going to leave it on the court. Every time we walked off the court, it was all good. Hey, bro, how you doing? Yeah, I'm good, man. What are we doing? And now we're at a point where adults, we're grown. He's got a kid. He's got another one on the way. I'm a married man now. Now we sit back and we reminisce on those days. Man, we were going to kick each other's ass on the court that day.
But you know what, though? I guarantee if y'all step on the court and you're picked on two different teams, you'll still get that same competitive edge. And you'll throw a hard foul on him, and he's still going to get up and shove you and say, "I'm going to kick your ass later. I'm going to get you."
Oh, that's it. That's what and I want that.
The juices, they go.
Hey, let me tell you something. He'll call you out. That's what I love about it. There was one time we went down, we played against some young kids. He's like, "Oh, what happened to the legend? How come you're not playing hard?" I'm like, "Boy, if you lost your mind." Next thing you know, I got hat on backwards, the shirt's coming off, his shirt's on. We're ready to go. And these young guys, they're like maybe high school, some of them are maybe 19, 20. They're looking at us like, "Oh my God, it's about to go down."
Like, didn't they come here as boys, and now what's good?
And I'm like, put us against each other. You already know what it is, though. But we don't need to be together to make this work.
Yeah, and and I feel like that's something like my brother's friends group with Robert Planner, Joe Hackett, my brother himself, David Cuesta, Dapo Samoy, like that group. I hang out with them and I do sports with them, and they still, that might be like the last generation that still has that competitive fire with each other. And it's something that I just don't see happening as much, because also I think kids are afraid to, actually get to the point of fighting, where we weren't afraid of that. If I had to fight my boy, I fought my boy, we'd still hang out the next day. Like, that just happened. It is what it is. Most of the fights I got into were with my good friends. Like,
kids don't let it go these days, man.
No, they got to get after them. They got to jump them later. They got to go stab them or shoot them. It's crazy now. You can't just fight, win or lose, and come back the next day and dap up and be like, "Yo, that was dumb," and do it again next week. Like,
and be ready to kill each other again. I can't tell you how many times.
Often. Yo, that Lakers basketball court has seen as many fights as it has seen games amongst good friends.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Oh man, so we're gonna roll on. I want to get we're gonna roll on a little bit more. We're gonna do some professional sports stuff because I found out that you're a Chi-Town fan through and through. And again, I forgot that you did move there for a minute. But have you always been a Chicago fan, sports wise?
Yes, sir. That's actually where I'm from.
Okay, yeah. See, I'm learning.
Yeah.
I've known Didi for years, and I'm learning more and more about the man tonight than I ever have in our years of being friends. So
Yes, sir.
we're gonna touch on the three teams that are you. I don't think you're not that big of a hockey fan. You're not a big Blackhawks guy, are you?
No, I'm not a big Blackhawks guy, but don't get me wrong. If they're on a going, hey, the coach is watching.
Hey, boo the Blackhawks. All right, they can go somewhere. Anyway, so we're gonna talk about the team that you follow, the Cubbies, and the drought has finally been broken. The only
Yes.
championships they win aren't on video games anymore. They finally got one. What,
Yes.
as a fan that's been waiting literally his whole life to see one, how did it feel when you watched the Cubs win that championship?
Well, let me first break it down to you like this. First of all, Chicago's broken up to the south and the north, as you all know.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yes, it is.
One of the greatest things to see, in my opinion, I wasn't out there in Chicago. I was here in New Jersey when they won. But I talked to some of my friends out there, and they were like, yo, the Chicago family came together. There was nothing like seeing this win take place, and it happened. And I remember being on Facebook and watching some of my other friends, and seeing the tears of joy in their eyes almost made me go, man, I wish I was still back at home.
Now, how did White Sox fans respond to the Cubbies winning? Were they like, oh, y'all deserve it? Or were they like, oh, no, we hope you guys lost?
There was some hating going on as it started to happen, at least from what I saw on the Facebook feeds and the Twitter feed. But let me tell you something. Once that series started and the Cubs are in it, people are like, you know what? We're all one.
Yep,
It's
Chicago,
funny.
Shot-town up.
Yeah. It's funny how sports can bring people together no matter what opposite side of the team you're on kind of deal. It's like, yeah, let me go ahead and start rooting for these guys because
Yeah.
where my uncle is all about the White Sox, so to speak. He loves the White Sox, and we got the hats and everything like that. But then, every so often you see that Cubs out there, and you're like, that's us right there, the Cubbies for life, baby.
So, do you think they have a chance this year at going back? They still have a good hitting team. They still have Chris Bryant, who's a bona fide stud in the game. They have Schwarber. They have Rizzo. They have good players up and down. Their pitching took a hit without Arrieta. Do you think that they have a chance at coming at it this year, or you think they need to rebuild again a little more?
I think they're going to be very good. But let me tell you something. Let me tell you how small the world is again. You're not ready for this, brother.
No, I'm not.
Rizzo, okay?
Yeah.
My principal, when I was in grade school, I cannot make this up. Living in San Diego, my principal was Miss Rizzo, okay? She was the mother of him.
No way. Like, that's crazy.
She came to visit our school one time. We were young. This is when he was young into his career.
Yeah.
And we went nuts just because there was someone famous. He was this young guy coming in. He had all the cup stuff on. And at that time, living in San Diego, I was the only one from Chicago. So I'm like, oh! I'm like screaming my head off. He comes and shakes my hand. It was the greatest thing in the world. And this is before selfies were invented and all this other stuff. So
fun fact, Bill Nye invented the selfie. You didn't know that one.
Oh, well, Bill. But I just remember how exciting that was. And I actually just emailed Ms. Rizzo not too long ago, maybe a couple months ago. No, not even. It was during teacher appreciation because I was telling my own students to reach out to former teachers or principals or people. And I was like, Ms. Rizzo, you probably don't even remember me. I'm just, I was just a blimp on the map. She was a principal at the time. There's no way she remembers me. And, she never really responded, but it was me taking that moment to go, wow, I would never forget that. I actually mentioned how the Cubs won.
Yeah, shoot her another message and tell her you gave her another shout out on a small podcast that gets like 5 listeners.
I sure will. Hey, that'll bump you up to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and who knows? Maybe the Cubbies will be listening to this.
Yo, yeah, Cubbies, if you're listening to this, I'm a Yankees fan, but for like 10 minutes, if you guys hit me up, I'll be a Cubs fan.
Hey, that's it, man. I'm sure they can convert you quick.
Now, it's funny you mentioned like you meet, and I know you were a Lakers kid, but at Manchester Middle School, we had Mr. Pierce. And I don't know if Mr. Pierce is still there, but Mr. Pierce is the father of Christy Rampone, which is one of the greatest soccer Olympians the nation has ever seen. And it's a small world because she would come visit Manchester every once in a while, and just what a privilege it was for those young women at Manchester Middle School soccer to meet this superstar who played alongside Mia Hamm, Abby Wambach, and all these other amazing athletes. So another fun small world connection just right there. So
man.
We're going to jump away from the Cubbies, and we're going to go on to the Bears, who,
oh boy, let's not.
I mean, we can, because you guys, I think that you guys finally have a quarterback in Mr. Mitchell Trubisky. Are you a Trubisky believer, or are you a doubter?
Listen, I'm gonna tell you how we said it on SportsCenter. How do you pronounce that name?
Oh wow! You can't pronounce the name. He hasn't arrived.
Listen, all I can tell you is that, and I mean no disrespect, but as a Bears fan, man, there comes a point where you just turn the TV off and you just say, not right now. Because since the Brian Urlacher left and the defensive greats that were on that team, it was all about, there's no way the Bears will ever lose. Their defense is everything. Dude, we haven't had a quarterback in forever. Rex Grossman was so inconsistent. Cutler was so inconsistent.
Rex Grossman might be the worst quarterback to ever play in a Super Bowl. And that's not even he had a good year that year, but it was that defense that brought him. And he wasn't even Trent Dilfer good enough to win it. Trent Dilfer's a terrible quarterback, and he won one.
My heart truly broke. I get frustrated, and then my wife or my students or people say, "You're a bandwagoner, man," because even though we'll always love the Bears at heart, there are times I'm like, I can't jump on this. I literally have to say, who else will I root for? Because I just don't want to be disappointed. I can't tell you how I'm going to look at the score. I'm like, why?
Yeah, don't root for the Jets, because that's just torture too. I'm tortured every year too. So.
Oh no, I'm not rooting for them. Well, believe it or not, my wife is an Eagles fan. So.
Boo.
So, she's
congrats to her, but boo.
Yeah, well, it was so funny. I ended up having to jump on that bandwagon. At one point, and I'm going to get a lot of boos for this as well, but, there was one point where I was like, all right, the Patriots are, they're a good team, they're good, and all this stuff came out, and I'm like, come on, Patriots, you're killing me, I love seeing a coach and a quarterback connect so well. And I thought it was the most amazing thing. But
you know what, though? With all this stuff, people forget that they're human beings, too. Belichick might not seem like one, but he's also a human being. And human relationships are messy. And who knows if they ever had a real relationship or if it was just a very good working relationship. Because some of the best people I ever worked with, I didn't like, but we worked well together. And that's just part of life. So with this all coming out that he's now having issues with Gronkowski and there's certain players that come he runs that place like a machine. He's about doing his job and he's about winning. And, so it's craziness and all this stuff coming out. Someone's trying to break down the Patriots because this stuff goes on, I think, in every organization and every well-run organization, too, where a coach is a stickler. You're going to have players that go, what the hell's wrong with this dude? He hates us, doesn't he? But we win. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a double-edged sword with that stuff. So expectations this season for your Bears. Do you think playoffs are potential? Does Trubisky take that step to lead you?
You got to give it at least 2 years, in my opinion. And I'm going to be honest. I'm just a real person. Maybe I'll watch the first 2 games and kind of see what it's like. But then I'm going to do what I always do. I'm just going to turn the channel. My wife will say, turn the Eagles on, or if I'll have the Eagles on. I'd rather watch a team that's going to win a game and bring some hope than to watch those Bears play.
Isn't it weird to say that the Eagles are going to win games and bring hope? The Eagles weren't great for a long time. Since McNabb, they've been They had Foles have that great 1 year. He obviously won them the championship last year. Carson Wentz has been a breath of fresh air. But in between there, it wasn't pretty at all.
Right. Well, it's been interesting to see how the Eagles have transformed over time. I remember as a kid growing up, and you remember actually early when we were probably in high school when. What was it, 05? The Eagles went to the Super Bowl that year
with T.O. and McNabb and them, yeah. And it's a funny story.
T.O. was on the cover of everything, man. He was the video game guy,
And I've told this story, I think, on the podcast before, but actually one of my close family friends, Lou Jacobs, he started an organization called the Junior Eagles Cheerleaders, which my sister, Christina Klein, was on. My cousin, Jessica Porterways, they were on that. And what it was is younger girls, middle school level, because I was young, so I had to be middle school, would go and perform at halftime, cheerleaders, of an NFL game. And the Eagles bought into it. They did it. My sister did it. And I was actually it was an Eagles-Lions game. Deuce Staley was the running back. I think Ty Detmer was the quarterback. And
Oh, God.
standing in front of me, because we had field level. I couldn't see over football players. I had to watch it on the Tron. But at one point in that game, we were on the visiting sideline. So we were on the Lions side. Standing not 20 feet in front of me is the greatest running back of all time, Barry Sanders. And
Wow.
I knew who he was. And also standing next to him was Herman Moore, one of the most underrated receivers in the history of the game. And just those two guys, and they were icons to me. And I was very into sports, starting to really get into it. So I knew who those two guys were. And, you know, I tried to yell their names, but being professionals, they know how to tune it out. They're there to win a game. But I'll never forget just seeing Barry Sanders, number 20, standing in front of me multiple times in that game. It was a great experience.
Wow.
Yeah, it was.
That's awesome.
So, needless to say, you probably don't think that this team is comprised of enough players to compete with the Packers or the Vikings.
Unfortunately, no. But, again, because I don't want to give out too much hope. You know how that goes. I don't want to get the opposite curse here. But let's just – the Bears fan, you're going to have to learn we take it game by game, week by week. We can't even look past teams anymore like the Browns or anything. We just are like,
Y'all were just hoping that Ditka puts the jacket back on, the jersey, and goes and plays tight end for you guys again.
Dude, it's something. Anything like that. We'll take anything.
So we're gonna shift some gears to another Shottown team. This one is also in a rebuild. It's been tough because this is now their second major rebuild since Jordan's retired. They had one. They got They had one where they were bad. Got Derrick Rose. It brought him up. Then D Rose got his injury string started. He left, and they've had some good teams with Jimmy Butler, but they never got past that hump. And now they're back in a legitimate rebuild. Lauri Markkanen is now the face of the team at this point. Is this rebuild seem like it's been going on longer since D Rose, since Jimmy Butler? They had a really decent season his last year. They never could really get past LeBron. And since he left, is this a team that you thought had better players, that the rebuild would be quicker than what it's taking right now?
The rebuild is slow and steady, brother. Slow and steady wins the race. And I tell you what's going to happen. Give this team as well another season or so, and then we're going to start to find our mold. The problem is we won't be able to compete still with teams like the Cavaliers in the East for the reason that
we'll probably feature Sixers, because I think LeBron's going to Philly.
Well, can I tell you? Let's see what happens with that. I actually just read an article on that. He's bidding on 4 different teams. Well, from what the article said, but we'll see what happens with that.
Well, I'll tell you right now, you probably heard it first weeks ago. If you listen to this podcast, my man Brandon Scoop B. Robinson, he's a NBA insider. He was a writer for The Source magazine. He writes at Basketball Society right now, has scoopbradio.com. Good friend of this podcast, one of my good friends in sports right now. I asked him, because it was weeks ago, still regular season time, where's LeBron going after this year? And he was the first one that I really heard say, there's a really good chance he goes to Philly. And he's been saying it now since he's talked to me on that podcast. He thinks it's Philly. He's an inside. Like, this dude, he's if you've never seen him, look up Brandon Scoop B. Robinson, D.D. You would love the man. He is everything that you describe that you would like as a human being. Scoop is that guy. He's just a humble, great man that works hard at his craft and is very good at what he does. You would love him. Definitely go look him up.
Yeah, I will definitely do that. I like that name, Scoop, anyway.
Well, fun story for him. Speaking of, I'm a big Nets fan. New Jersey Nets, now Brooklyn Nets. I watched him because he won a contest to be the host of Nets Slammin' Planet, which was a show which took, these two kids that won a contest, and specifically Scoop, and they basically interviewed the current players and talked about sports. And as he told me who he was, I was like, I used to watch you on this show when I was a young Nets fan. So it's just funny, the small world. And now, we connected through the Nothing But Nets website, which, I loved writing for them. And that's where we connected. And since then, me and him have been, exchanging texts. He's been on the show the podcast twice. So it's just a great connection and a great friendship that I now have. So it's funny that, and just he came from there, and it's just a great thing.
That's incredible, man. That really is.
So I really want to ask you, Lauri Markkanen is now basically the face of your team. I don't think he's a superstar. I think he's a nice player.
Yeah.
Where is your next superstar coming from? Is there a chance you get LeBron, Paul George, CP3, Durant? They're all coming up. They're all free agents. Does the allure of playing in the house that Jordan built bring any of them there?
I can't believe I'm saying this, but wouldn't it be cool if LeBron did go to Chicago? Just because he wears that number 23 so well, as far as life is concerned.
It would be cool, but the main reason I don't think he's going to L.A. or Chicago is because he does not want to walk in anybody's shadow. He does not want to sit there and be compared to Kobe Magic, the greats in L.A. He does not want to be compared to Jordan any more than he already is, because, man, imagine him going to Chicago. The comparisons would then, they're already insane and ridiculous. Could you imagine if he goes?
Right. I know, and it's already a war every single day on Facebook, every day.
So
on
stupid.
Sports
it's such a stupid debate. It really is.
It is. I mean,
they're two different players completely.
We won't get someone like him. I know that's true, but it would be nice to see Chris Paul there.
Now I think PG-13 is a possibility. Paul George is a possibility. I really think that.
How great would Paul George be with that color on that? I think he could definitely work it and bring a different kind of heightened to the game that's needed for Chicago right now. Chicago doesn't have what we used to. I mean, even early, a couple, maybe not even a whole 10 years ago, when we had like a Kirk Heinrich back in the day, Luol Deng. Like, I mean, these guys brought it, and they had something, and they were there, but we just didn't quite make it, you know?
They were every year easily the second best defensive team, because LeBron teams were typically the best defensive, but the Bulls were right there, and Coach Tibbs, that team, and people forget, like, it's funny, like, Jimmy Butler is this offensive superstar now. That dude made his medal being the best defender in the game, the best wing defender for a long time, and learning from a guy in Luol Deng, who is a very good defender. And like you said, Kurt Heinrich was a gracious backup when D Rose came up, and there was one of the first teams that we saw the double point guard, where D Rose was a scorer first that could dish, and Heinrich was a guy that wanted to pass that can get you a clutch three. And that's where we really saw this double point guard mentality start to go. But it was also a defensive team. They were such an anomaly. And it's just, if LeBron doesn't exist, those Bulls teams probably compete or win championships.
Yeah.
They might be stopped by the Tim Duncan, Parker, Ginobili Spurs, but they would get there. But LeBron does exist.
and he's going to continue to do his thing, man. This guy ain't going nowhere, but I do think he will be leaving the Cavs for sure.
I thought he was going to stay after watching this series, and the fact that Kevin Love can't give him 20 a night, J.R. Smith can't give him 20 every once in a while, like, it's something that he needs a part of a supporting cast. Like, Kyrie was a very good supporting guy. He was going to get you that 21. So if another guy chipped in 15, that was good. We would have 30, we'd have 20, we'd have 15. The bench could make up the rest, or they could scatter in. Now he has to score 39, 40, get 15 assists and 12 boards. And then for what? For the rest of the team to score 30, 40? Like, it's embarrassing. It really is.
Yeah.
But we could talk about that topic forever. But unfortunately, D.D., we're going to have to wrap this up where it is. But it was so much fun talking to you, my man. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Oh, man, it was a pleasure being a part of it, man. It really was. I appreciate everything that you're doing and the voice that you're having in sports. So thank you for that.
And I'm trying to continue to, do this as much as I can. I'm hoping to gain more listeners. If you are listening and you are interested in getting D.D. to come and motivational speak, I hope listening to the man's passion a little bit on this podcast has convinced you that his voice and his word is something that you want to hear or you want to bring to people. Get in contact with him on Facebook. Where else can people find you, D.D.?
Again, Facebook at Darnell Denzel Williams, Instagram at Mr. D_Williams, and Twitter at Mr. D_Williams as well.
Absolutely. And again, I'm Alex Cuesta. You can find me on Twitter at @_Cuesta30. Find Sports Opinions on Twitter at SportsOpinion30. And listen to us on iTunes, Google Play Music, Spreaker, YouTube, iHeartRadio. Go follow, listen, subscribe so you can always get great podcasts like this one. Again, D.D., I really appreciate you coming on, my man. It was a blast. I hope you had some fun.
Yeah, I did, man. I did. It was good reminiscence, so I really appreciate that, man. And getting to go back. What a small world it is for sure.
Without a doubt. And again, thank you for listening to the Sports Opinions Podcast, episode 26. Have a good one.